I am Sarah Montgomery. I am Vice President of Research and Development, and I'm also head of our regulatory department, and Chief Chaos Coordinator sometimes. uh,
Hey.
I was one of the original formulators of the crop side, our ingrained product. That's the majority of our crop side, back in 2020. Um, and I'm in Northwest Kansas. So any rain you want to send, I would gladly take it.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'm Chris Schutze. I'm the founder of Tracer Minerals, um, based out of near Dodge City, Kansas, a town called Cimarron. We really appreciate the opportunity to work with you folks and share information. So hopefully, we'll bring some new ideas and thoughts and plans for the planting season and the growing season this year that are valuable to you. And uh, and we got a good team with Sarah and Michael, and they'll do a great job helping educate you on chelated minerals.
Yep. And I'm Michael Prescott. So I got to know the Schutze family, which I don't know, I might have missed it, but Sarah is Chris's daughter, and we're a family run business. And I got to know Chris about 12 years ago, ran into him at a trade show, and got to be pretty good friends with him, and really enjoyed the science that they had and the chemistry and the quality of product they had. And so, I started kind of working with his products, and then I worked for Chris for close to 10 years and going full bore. So, um, again, family run company that makes one heck of a product.
Yep. And we've been working with you guys for a little over a year. We've been at GHA. We've been very happy with the products. We've been able to raise tissue levels and really make things really change sap samples, which is something that I think industry wide has been a chase. Everybody's trying to get their sap samples correct, and the tracer minerals kind of the first round that we've actually witnessed. You don't always need gallons in order to move those levels, and hopefully Sarah can give us some of the science behind why that is. And we're just really looking forward to this training, and it is getting recorded. But if there is questions, feel free to ask. I know we got quite a few other people that wanted the recording as well. So if you have a question, definitely ask. Sarah, I will kind of let you start, or Chris, I don't know which one of you is the leading, so.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think I was going to get started, right, Sarah?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what I wanted to touch on real quick is what a chelated mineral is, because that's really what our business is. We manufacture true amino acid chelated minerals. We're in the livestock business, the human sector, and also obviously crops and fertilizer, but it's all the same chemistry. We just use feed grade ingredients to make the fertilizer product and the animal stuff. And then obviously on the human side, we have to use human grade ingredients in a human facility. But if any of you have heard of magnesium glycinate on the internet, that's one of the products that we make. But what it is we take a single metal ion. So we take zinc or copper or manganese or magnesium, and we attach those to a single amino acid. And when we do that, we make a new molecule that's electrically neutral, and it has a small molecular size. And so what that does is the electrically neutral molecule can be absorbed in people. It's absorbed in the jejunum or in animals. In plants, it goes right into the leaf tissue, and Sarah will visit more about that later. So this is a schematic of what an amino acid chelate looks like. So the gray ball on this would be the metal ion, and the amino acid chain is the red and the blue and the black. So the word chelate comes from the Latin word meaning claw. So it's like a lobster claw hooking onto a piece of sand. And so that claw or that chelate structure is what gives it its electrically makes it electrically neutral. One of the important things is that we have to provide, when we react this product, we have to bring enough amino acids to the number of metal ions that we have. So we have to do this in a 1-to-1 molar ratio, they call it. So I always tell people you have to have enough boys to dance with the girls to make sure that you have a fully reacted chemistry. We also have a small molecular size, so we don't use hydrolyzed protein or proteinate type things. We use single amino acids because we know that their molecular size is between 150 Daltons all the way down to 75 Daltons is what the molecular weight of those amino acids is. So we want it to be small so they can go right through the tissue, which is the elegant design of an actual amino acid chelate. This chemistry comes out of the old Albion company that was out of Clearfield, Utah. I used to work for those folks, and then they sold the company off. And so we've put that chemistry back together and the company back together. So it's the most solid, sought after chemistry that's out there. It's environmentally safe. It's safe to humans. It's effective, and it's really the future of this type of technology. So, Sarah, do you want to continue on from here?
Real quick, Chase, I think you have a couple people in the waiting room. Would you like me to add
Yeah,
them?
if you want to let them in, that'd be great.
Oh,
Brant just stepped out, so we have
I
some people in the
think
waiting room.
I think they all got added.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Oops, now let me get that out of the way. Okay. So we covered all that material with the bonding ratios and things like that. And Chris did an excellent job explaining this. He's always the go-to guy if you ever need anything. The number one important thing to remember is this heterocyclic ring. Hetero just means different, cyclic means cycle. So it's a ring made up of different elements. But that is really the core driver for everything. The amino acids are phenomenal for the plant. The mineral is phenomenal for the plant, but that heterocyclic ring structure is really what makes 1 + 1 = 3 and is really the kicker that gives the chemistry the ability to do something really different. So just keep that in mind as we go on. One of the beautiful things about that heterocyclic ring is it protects from antagonisms. When it makes that ring structure, it's happy being on its own. It really doesn't like to mess with anything. It's just chill. So we don't see a lot of the tie up and things like that we see with like our sulfates or other compounds. So now that we've kind of talked about the whole molecule, I kind of wanted to talk about the components just to make sure everybody's on the same page. So everything starts with amino acids. They're like the Legos, the individual building blocks. Then you start putting them together, and it's not quite a finished product, but that's called a peptide when you're kind of in the middle stage. And ultimately, you end up with a protein, which is your final Lego project, your final project, usable molecule for the plant. So the big thing I wanted to point out to everyone here is this is what an amino acid looks like, regardless of what amino acid it is. The only thing that changes is this R group, the side chain. So keep your eye on that picture as we go to the next slide. So this might look familiar. Here on the top right-hand corner is that same amino acid. And if you look on the left-hand side, you see an ammonia molecule. And we're all pretty familiar with ammonia or some form of nitrogen that we apply, usually in furrow or usually soil applied. But ultimately, we are supplying nitrogen in whatever form to plants to make amino acids and thus build proteins. So we are feeding the plants building blocks, and tracer minerals or amino acid chelates do the same thing. They're just one step further in the process. Still small enough they're absorbed correctly or absorbed intact, but enough that the plant doesn't have to spend time breaking it down to rebuild it, to make an amino acid, to make a protein. We kind of are able to skip that step, save some energy, and also save time for the plant and resources. So ultimately, we feed nitrogen to make proteins. So before I jump to the next slide, everybody talks about amino acid technology like it's a new thing. And people get really excited about it, but also a little wary because they don't feel like they know it. But I can guarantee that every single one of us, as farmers, as really homeowners, anything like that, have used amino acid technology throughout. We just didn't know. So I like to show this slide just to show that we really do. We have been using it for decades. On the right-hand side, you have a glycine molecule, which is just an amino acid. And then on the left-hand side, you have a glyphosate. So you have the same glycine molecule with a carbon and then a phosphate group at the end. So this is not new technology. Amino acid chelation technology specifically has been around since the 50s. So it is utilized quite a bit. It's just not been advertised as such. So I just want everybody to know that you're further along than you actually know. So we wanted to talk about the difference between amino acid chelated minerals, which is that heterocyclic ring structure we showed again, versus our sulfates down at the bottom. This is, or inorganics, this is just a sulfate. Oops. Let's see here. I think I added colt. We'll see. And then on the far right-hand side, we have an EDTA molecule. So each one of these balls or elements is roughly the same size. It's just hard to equate. So you can see that sulfates are the smallest by far. Amino acid chelates are a little bit bigger, but not huge. And then you run into EDTA, which is a very large molecule with lots of branch offs and lots of things to grab a hold of. It's a much larger molecule relatively. And it can still make that chelation bond, because remember, it's like a lobster claw grabbing a grain of sand. It can still make the bond through different sections of this molecule. But EDTA does not like to be alone. It loves having a partner or multiple partners. It will go into the plant. It could potentially drop off its metal. It might not, depending on what's available, but it will always leave with something. It cannot be used in its form by the plant. It's kind of, once it enters the plant, drops off its mineral, the plant either has to expel it or work on breaking it down. It's not something that's utilized directly by the plant like an amino acid is. So that's just something to keep in mind. Half-life on it is about, it varies, but it's about 40 days. So it can take up to 180 days to completely clear a system, depending on the weather and environment. So it's one of those, the plant has to figure out what to do with it or has to combat it. So that's just something to keep in mind. The other thing to note is with the amino acid, you'll see this blue ball here. And then the EDTA, you'll see two blue balls here. With sulfates, you don't see that at all. The thing to note is the blue signifies a nitrogen. So the plant will identify that nitrogen, and that dictates where the product is moved within the plant, which vascular tissue it gets routed through. So just remember, amino acid chelates and EDTA both have nitrogen. Sulfates or inorganics do not. That also goes for like your chlorides, oxides, things like that are inorganics. So the reason why this matters, so this is, it looks like a lot. I promise it'll be okay. So this is the cross section of a leaf. You have the top side and the bottom side of the leaf. So the top side, you have these little hairs that are part of the waxy cuticle, and on the underside, you have your waxy cuticle, but you also have stomata, which are little mouths that open and close. So when a product gets sprayed on the surface of a leaf, most products, whether it's a fungicide, herbicide, your EDTAs, your sulfates, those all require for passage through the stomata on the underside of the leaf. There's some on the stems too, but predominantly through the underside of the leaf. That is why when you see products that say you cannot spray these products past 86 degrees Fahrenheit, it's because above that temperature, those little mouths close. They no longer exchange gas. They no longer are an opening into the leaf. So most products have to utilize that temperature range so they can utilize that natural opening in the leaf. Amino acid chelates are a little different because of their size and their heterocyclic ring. So I will talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. The other important thing to note before we jump ahead is here is a vascular bundle. So you can think of this like a vein in a plant. And there are two types of vascular tissue. One is a xylem and one is a phloem. Xylem always transports water and inorganic minerals, and it is a one-way system. Think of it like your gut. You should go from your mouth to your stomach and out. If it's not moving that direction, something's wrong. Well, same with plants, except they like to eat with their feet. So it starts at the roots, goes up through the plant and out through the leaves, up through the stem and out through the leaves. When you are looking at your phloem, like a phlebotomist in a hospital that takes blood, your phloem is your plant blood, your sap. So that actually continuously circulates like your blood system throughout the plant and gets utilized as it goes. So that seems like a lot. So I know that was a lot, but we'll go to the next slide. Here we go. So the interesting thing with amino acid chelated minerals is they are small enough in size, and they also have that heterocyclic ring structure with a negative, with no charge, electroneutral charge. That they actually can hit that surface of the leaf. They are not attracted nor are they repelled because they don't have a charge, and they actually pass through the waxy cuticle of the leaf directly into the plant. And then because of that nitrogen containing component, that amino acid, it goes into the phloem and starts cycling throughout the plant. EDTA would utilize the stomata on the underside of the leaf or on some on the stem. It would enter the phloem as well and start moving throughout the plant. Sulfates would, if they hit this top side of the leaf, they would stick there because they have that charge. So they have to utilize that stomata on the underside of the leaf as well. The top right-hand corner graphic was one done by University of Florida. They have done a lot of chelation work through the years, and they have some really interesting graphics. So if you ever see chelation work tied with the university, usually it's Florida influenced. So how do we know that our product is entering the leaf? How do we know that it's actually moving throughout the phloem besides just pulling sap samples? There was actually a study done that looked at radioactive isotope testing, which is just a fancy way of saying that they tagged it with something that they were able to measure on a different scale. So I wanted to show this. When you see metallosate, it's just an amino acid chelate. And it showed how much of the product was actually able to enter into the leaf tissue, and then how quickly or how much it moved into the adjacent leaf, and also they treated the stems as well. And throughout this, they were able to show that amino acid chelates were absorbed not quite twice as well as EDTA, and about the same for a sulfate. So we're showing that we're getting better absorption. We're also getting faster translocation through the plant. Part of that size, part of that is the actual entrance, I think, is we aren't competing for the same entry point. So it's very interesting to see that not only are we entering the leaf faster, we're moving throughout the plant faster. And it's quite interesting to see how that works. The study was also done with other metals and other crop tissues as well. So here's just other portions, of that study showing that it took 2 to 3 hours for 90% of that product that was applied to enter into the plant. I asked why it wasn't done in a shorter time frame, and they said that's what their what they had capabilities in the lab. So it could potentially be less, but that's what they have research for. Within 2 hours, half of the applied product was actually moving throughout the plant. And also it was absorbed better and it translocated better than EDTA and sulfates. Albion did a ridiculous amount of research. They have about 300 species worth of research in total. So it's the same concept regardless of species. It just might move a little differently. So we talked about the amino acid side of it, and we talked about the whole nutrient, and now we need to talk about the mineral side, because ultimately we are in the mineral business, and we think that that's where we're really lacking in industry. We can handle the nitrogen portion, but we're just really falling short on minerals, and it doesn't take a lot, but it also doesn't take a lot to doesn't take a lot missing to start having a problem as well. And it's also hard because you can usually hide the visible aspects of a mineral deficiency by over applying nitrogen. It's like if you aren't drinking water and you have a headache and you keep taking Tylenol and keep taking Tylenol and keep taking Tylenol, your headache goes away and you do fine. Well, the other fix would be to just drink some water. But the Tylenol is a quick fix, it's an easy fix, and it's something that's pretty well guaranteed to work. Everybody loves to go to the doctor, and the doctor says, you have to eat right and exercise and not be on your phone as much. And it's not the fun way, but it's the right way. Well, making sure that we have our micros handled including our micro program might not be the easy way, but it's the right way. Because right now we have the best machinery, we have the best spray, we can influence nature a little bit through irrigation. We have all of these different components, genetics, but we're missing the other part, the mineral part. So this is a chart that I made using an app called the Nutrient Removal by Crop app that the Hefty Brothers and the International Plant Nutrition Institute put out. It's a free app. It's really easy. Y'all are going to make fun of me because I put Southwest Kansas numbers in, so y'all can make fun of me. It's okay. But you can go in and enter your own. But these are the pounds of each mineral we remove every single year with that much yield. And some of these products have a really, really small amount. But if you start thinking about these fields have been farmed 50, 70, 100 years, it adds up over time. And very rarely do we actually apply these products back onto the ground. So it is definitely something worth looking at and something to start considering. Also, I argue that the values required are based off of a bell curve, and your labs say, okay, well, the average plant needs X, and so that is what they deem as sufficient levels. I argue that I worry that some of our nutritional recommendations are not keeping up with the genetic and other technology advancements that our plants are given, that our plants are working with. So I think that our numbers might actually be a little bit lower than what's actually necessary, but we can argue about that later. Oops. There we go. One of the big things that we've seen is the utilization of nutrients, whether it be water, minerals, organic matter, things like that, is that plants eat with their feet. And one of the big things, the three main ways a plant can get a nutrient out of the soil is, one, they either have to grow the root system to that nutrient. Two, they have to farm the little microbes to make the little buggies go get the nutrient and bring it to the plant root. Or three, they have to start sucking up water and hoping that they're able to pull that nutrient into the root system. So this was a study done in Nebraska, it's a big deal in drought-ridden areas, but it's also a big deal in areas that see a lot of lodging because that plant is hungry and is trying to pull in as much water as it can to try to grab all those nutrients and bring it in. And we're seeing that too much, where our plants are using more water than they actually are required to because they're hungry and are trying to eat more or less. So this was something that was really interesting, and this was done in central Nebraska. But we're finding that giving the little amounts of micronutrients are actually influencing how our more macronutrients are being utilized. Mike, I don't know if you want to kind of talk about this in a little bit with the marketing standpoint, or are you tired of hearing me talk yet?
No, you're doing good, but I can touch on the slide that Sarah has up. We've worked with some of our growers so when we really got involved in the crop deal, which was what, Sarah, 6 years ago, roughly, somewhere in
Yep.
there, and started, at first doing trials, on-farm trials, just looking at ROI and yield, mainly on corn and soybeans. And as we were progressing and seeing good benefits and great ROI, we had some guys come back to us and say, hey, when we put your amino acid chelated mineral foliar product in with our herbicide program, we are seeing better kill on the weeds. And so this is actually some pictures, if you see here on the left, that's weeds that are growing good. That was actually with an application of a glyphosate product, just glyphosate. I believe that was sprayed with just a gentleman went out with a little 2-gallon weed sprayer and put glyphosate in. And then the pictures on the right would be glyphosate with the technology from Tracer, the amino acid chelates. And we have some videos that if you guys want some videos, just have Chase. Actually, I could probably send them to you, Chase, and you can forward them on to your dealers and customers and distributors. But that is a telltale sign that when Sarah was talking about how the amino acids take product or these micronutrients into the plant, we're also doing some really cool combining that with the glyphosate, carrying that in the plant, and getting some better kill on the weeds. Does anybody have any questions on that aspect of it?
We just don't know how to market it so Bear doesn't come knocking on my door the next day.
What kind of amino acids, or what did you use, or what would you use in your burn down that you've seen people use? I mean, like manganese, or what would you use?
So, Dean, to answer that question, on this program here was a product we call Ingrained. It's a formulation of a couple different, it's got the zinc, it's got the manganese, copper, and so forth. I know that Chase and Colt have programs out there, ZMIC. Is that right, Chase? That's one of the programs that, if you're using that on label of what Chase and Colt have, I'm pretty sure you're going to see the same benefits that we're seeing here on the screen right now.
Thank you.
So officially, we aren't quite sure what the mechanism is that increases the efficacy of the glyphosate, or we see similar results with certain fungicides as well. I do believe part of it is when we make our amino acid chelation process has an acidic byproduct. It's actually a dilute sulfuric acid, so you get a little bit of sulfur in it too. But the University of Tennessee has done lots of work with pH balancing and how that increases efficacy of different herbicides and fungicides. They think part of it is it conditions the water so that that extra acidic product protects or takes the brunt of water imbalances. It also extends the half-life of the products you're putting in your tank. Some fungicides have a half-life of like, I don't know, like 35 minutes. So you put it in a tank mix and you better be rolling. So uh, they think that I do believe that is part of this. It also uh, breaks that surface tension so you have better exposure or better contact on the leaf surface and going into the stomata. It also doesn't compete for those absorption sites. So while your glyphosate is trying to go through the stomata and the other underside, your amino acid chelation or your amino acid chelated minerals are going straight in through the cuticle. There is some work that indicates some increased cuticle permeability, but I can't officially say that. But I do think that that's probably part of it as well. Like I said, you start getting into some EPA legalese when you start saying things are definitive, that's how that works. And the EPA scares me a little bit some days. So I do believe, in my professional opinion, that this is kind of the root that is causing that increased efficacy of your herbicides.
And on that, Sarah, before if you could, so on the half-life of the fungicides, the pH is extremely important on that. The higher the pH, the less effective it is. And you talked about that 35 minutes. That's a very common thing now in the last year and a half with a lot of the studies that have been done. But also the amino acid is an organic compound as well. So that, from what we've seen when we're using, our Fulvix and stuff like that, we get it into the plant a lot more efficiently due to those organic compounds in the plant uptaking it very quickly. And if there's any additional amino acid in that mineral blend, that would also chelate the chemistry to some degree, correct?
Repeat that question because I want to make sure I heard it right.
If there would be some, let's say, unchelated amino acids in that blend, that would also chelate the chemistry and drive it into the plant quicker, correct?
In theory, yes. We ensure that we chelate to a very high percentage, so there's not a lot of free floating amino acids, just because I worry about the controllability of that. It'd be really cool to be able to just dump amino acids into a tank, but amino acids they're kind of pick me girls. They don't really like to be alone. And so sometimes they'll bind to things, and we would prefer to bind our amino acids in a controlled environment and make sure that we have controlled results.
Yep.
So yes, and I think you can see a little bit of chelation with your organic compounds, your fulvics and your humics. I do think from a chemical standpoint, there is some chelation that happens there and is able to pull it in. Also, I think it excites the plant and makes it more readily able or more readily wanting to absorb the technology that you put in the tank.
Yep.
Makes it greedy, if that makes sense.
100%.
But that's one reason why I think your primer blitz is a really cool formula, because I do think that kind of hits it from a multitude of angles. So it's really cool to see how you can kind of mix and match. And the nice thing is everything tank mixes well. It all plays nice with each other partially because of that heterocyclic ring structure. It does not get tied up, and it's fine being on its own, and it doesn't cause problems.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Go ahead. You can continue.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. I just threw some of these in. Dan Lupkis is one of the top crop corn warriors. Here we go. He used ingrained and then another citrus oil based product to combat white mold in soybeans, and he really focused on copper heavy. And I believe he did that instead of a fungicide. Is that correct, Prescott?
Yes, that is correct. Yep.
So um, we can use.
I want to throw one more thing, on Dan's deal
Yes.
where he's talking about, the white mold. We've also done research on fescue with endophyte. I know this is probably a little bit out of your guys' realm with the, more corn and soybean based deals, but here in Missouri, oh, Sarah's got slides. I'm sorry. But
No, you're good.
so I jumped ahead, but this is some really cool stuff that we've done because in the livestock world, reducing these numbers in front of you that you guys are seeing, the ergovaline parts per billion at 381 down to 119 is absolutely huge. From conception rates, and if you can't get a cow to breed, you're in trouble. And it's kind of like if we can't get the corn in the ground at the right time and keep it healthy, we're in trouble. So going on Dan Lumpkis's deal or the Corn Warriors white mold issue and using copper, it goes along with using copper in this type of situation, can really reduce some of these molds or funguses that we're seeing, which is really, really huge. But I think Sarah will back me up. We don't want to get too far out there on the marketing and make claims, right? But we are doing some research on it to see what we can do. And the results we're seeing right now are really, really cool. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, this was just an example to show the difference between xylem and phloem, but I think that kind of covers everything I had. I just had a couple extra slides just in case I needed to have as a reference to elaborate for anybody, but I know I threw a lot of information in a very small amount of time and definitely went over my allotted time, so I'm so sorry, Chase.
No, that is perfect. No, it was well put together. Thank you very much. A couple things I do want to hit on before we kind of get too far out of this and maybe answering some questions. But as we talk about the use rate on a lot of these products, so we discussed it briefly the other day, but what we've noticed is where we've been using maybe half a gallon to a quart of like a manganese sulfate, we're getting our tissue levels to jump tremendously with a pint to a quart. And I think it goes back to the efficiencies of the amino acids versus, even the EDTAs. I mean, really as a company, the only time we're really pushing the EDTAs is when it's soil applied or with high orthos, because the aminos aren't huge fans of high orthophosphate. But other than that, if foliars, we are dramatically shifting our lineup just to go after, because the use rates do not have to be as high as they have been in the past. Can Prescott or Sarah, either of you want to talk about that a little bit, or Chris?
Well, I think I'm going to talk about it just from a sales standpoint. If we can use something more efficiently, that's a huge word when it comes down to what can we do better for the environment, efficiency. And Chase, you mentioned it, we can use a lower amount and get better results. Why not do it? And what I see, if you guys are dealers or distributors for Chase, now all of a sudden we're able to work with that grower a little bit because they don't want to have a ton of stuff out there. And we're getting more involved with drones, right? And we can only apply so much product. Before, when it was all going through a big rig sprayer going across the field, that's a whole different ball game than where we're at with drones. So I look at it as we're probably a little bit more efficient in working with these other applicators as they come on, as the world gets better in technology. And efficiency. I think that's huge in today's world.
And the ROI on it. I mean, when you look at a pint of the tracer minerals versus, a quart of a lot of the other mineral combinations, whether it be EDTA or sulfates. I mean, the cost is not relatively that much more. And we're watching the tissue levels just pop right up with that. And they hold longer. That's the other thing that a lot of people don't really watch. You know, when we're running it through rain systems and the sulfates after 4 or 5 days are starting to fall off, you know, and they're frustrated because they can't keep those up. Well, when we have guys using the tracer mineral and we're keeping them up there for, you know, 14, 20 days, that speaks a lot to it. And it's, you know, it's ROI. I mean, you expect when you put something out there to get a return for what you're putting out there. And when we start to see, you know, whether it's a feel good number on a piece of paper or it's at the end of the year a higher yield, which is our ultimate goal, the better we can, the more efficient we can be with that dollar, the better off we are.
Hey, while we have this picture pulled up here, Sarah, and I'm going to ask a little bit of your help on this deal, just because I'm not a canola guy. But Sarah and I made a little tour this last year, and we've done some research on corn and soybeans, and this just happened to be a research trial up in North Dakota that we did with a gentleman on canola, and it was kind of an afterthought. I think Sarah sent some extra product up there to do a little research trial on, and they tried it, and so we went out in the field. But when Chase talks about ROI, Sarah helped me out here, but the ROI on this, just using our chelates compared to their other program, was absolutely huge. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but help me out, Sarah. What?
I want to say it was like $22 an acre or 22 and some change. And they were super pleased with it. Sometimes, so this was awesome, had a huge yield bump, like they were super excited about it. I think it was like, I mean, it was like a 5% bump, which was astronomical.
It was significant for roughly what it costs for our amino acids, and to have that 22 to 25 ROI. I mean, it was significant. And we've seen that across the board in a lot of our trials this last year. But it seemed like the canola and the specialty type crops, the ROI is like leaps and bounds ahead of the corn and soybean, at least what we're seeing.
And something else to note, there's a trial that was just done down the way from this one. Well, down the way, it's North Dakota, everything's down the way. But they did this with sunflowers. And they didn't see, or they did see a bump in yield, and they were really excited about that, and that was great. But he also is seeing that his soils are not nearly as depleted with the sunflowers as they normally are following a sunflower crop. So usually the sunflower crop just kind of decimates everything for the following year. Well, because it's a weed. Sorry if I offend anyone. It's a weed. So he's hoping and he's seeing that, one, his input costs are going to be lower this year because he's not having to replenish what the sunflowers did away with. But two, he thinks he can actually grow a crop this year after the sunflowers instead of just having almost a filler. So sometimes it's hard to capture the true benefit because it's spread out over several years. Kind of the same with like biology. You know, sometimes it has such a lasting impact. It's really cool to see that way. So that's just something to keep in mind too, that because we fed the plant itself, it did not need to take as much out of the ground. Also, the other thing I did have a grower tell me once was sometimes you can see a zero yield change or a zero yield bump, but still increase your ROI so much that you come out ahead. So that was something that he saw, and it also increased, or it set his dry down earlier. The plant dried down instead of having to wait for it to die and have Mother Nature dry it. And so he was able to get his crop out of the field before the snow. So I guess I've seen that with people that talk about snow, and I've seen that where people talk about that with hurricane season, is they're able to get into the field sooner and get that crop out.
In overall plant health, I mean, we've used this as part of our plant health where maybe we're not going to be needing, a second round of fungicide or something along those lines. But do you guys have any studies on like Brix levels and stuff like that where it was applied and raised, or is it more just based on the minerals and building the mineral content in that plant to be able to help offset some of the disease that comes in late, especially on corn?
So, Albion did quite a bit of research looking at bricks. I don't believe there's anything done in corn, but I can tell you it did raise bricks levels in things like sugar beets, cantaloupe, different berries, strawberries, elderberries, things like that. And I do think that Tom Dykstra was always the one that would talk about bricks levels and how that plant became more pest resistance or pest resistant. So there is a correlation there. So tracer minerals itself does not have any direct research, but we can pull from those old records with the technology.
Okay. Do we have any questions with the people that are on here to ask? Or is there anything else, Mike, Sarah, Chris, that you guys want to throw out there?
No, I would say from a sales standpoint, I always like to tell all of our, customers and dealers that we have different technology and everybody likes something new. And you guys have that technology now to go forward and come to the market first. Because if you think about every co-op or whoever we're all competing against, they all have the same technology that the next guy has down the road. This gives you guys a competitive advantage, something different than what everybody else is doing. But go ahead, Chase. Looks like we got a question, I think.
Ray Zoss asked, will this increase the efficacy of most herbicides, certain ones? We've had a variety of herbicides that have been sprayed. A lot of guys will use a tank mix. So can I specifically say this affects Valor more than Cobalt versus or Comet versus whatever? No, we probably can't say that, but if you were to play at University of Tennessee Research Keeper, I think it was 108 different herbicides and fungicides, and all of them were improved from a pH standpoint or using a pH product, a low pH product. There were a few that were neutral, but almost all of them were improved, and some were improved quite drastically. So with following that vein, it should help all of them. Someone's going to tell me I'm wrong, and that's okay.
It's a good question. Thanks, Trey.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay. If nobody else has anything, well, thank you guys all for your time, and Sarah, we really appreciate it, and we'll move forward, and I'm sure we'll have probably another Zoom here at some point and dig in maybe a little deeper and talk about different things that we're doing with these minerals. So thank you very much and have a good day.